The standoff. March 26, 1945. 15:42 hours. Western Germany, just east of the Rhine River. Cold air cuts through the broken town square. Stone dust still hangs in the sunlight, drifting slowly, settling on wrecked bicycles, shattered windows, and a burned-out Opel truck slumped against a wall. Somewhere nearby, an engine idles low, an American M4 Sherman, its turret angled slightly left, coaxial machine gun tracking a doorway that hasn't moved in minutes. Boots scrape across cobblestone. Not running. Not rushing. Measured steps. General George S. Patton walks forward without a helmet. His ivory-handled revolvers are holstered, visible but untouched. Around him, officers of 3rd Army tense almost imperceptibly. A major swallows. A sergeant tightens his grip on an M1 Garand. Fingers hover near triggers. No one speaks. Even the Sherman's engine seems to drop its pitch, as if listening. Ahead stands a German officer. He is tall. Middle-aged. His uniform is worn but immaculate, Feldgrau tunic brushed clean, iron cross still pinned at the throat. His Luger remains in its holster. His chin is lifted, not in arrogance but in refusal. Behind him, a narrow street choked with rubble, and somewhere beyond it, the last organized resistance of his command. Patton stops 3 paces away. Close enough to see the lines in the man's face. Close enough to smell cordite, sweat, old leather. The German commander speaks first. His English is precise. Educated. Come. If you intend to proceed, he says, voice steady, you will have to kill me. The square freezes. This is not bravado. Not a shout. Not a challenge meant for show. It is a statement. Final. Absolute. An American lieutenant inhales sharply. Another looks instinctively at Patton's right hand, the one everyone knows. The hand that has signed death warrants with a gesture. The hand that once slapped a soldier in a field hospital. The hand that carries a reputation faster than any armored column. Everyone expects the same thing. A step forward. Leather creaking. Steel drawn. That is how these moments usually end. But Patton does not move. For several seconds, the only sound is wind passing through a shell-shattered window frame, producing a low, hollow whistle. Somewhere far off, artillery rumbles, not close enough to matter, close enough to remind everyone the war is still alive. Patton studies the German officer. Not his weapon. Not the street behind him. His eyes. You are a brave man, Patton finally says. The German commander does not reply. Patton shifts his weight slightly. His voice remains conversational, almost casual, the voice of a man discussing maps over coffee, not fate over gunfire. You know your situation, he continues. Your communications are cut. Your armor is gone. Your men are exhausted. The German's jaw tightens. Patton takes one slow step to the side, breaking the straight line between them. It's subtle, almost nothing, but every American soldier notices. He is no longer standing as an executioner facing a condemned man. He is standing like a negotiator. The German commander's eyes flick, just briefly, toward the Sherman. Toward the infantry spreading out along the buildings. Toward the inevitable. Still he does not move. I will not order them to surrender, the German says. That is not my right. Patton nods once. You're wrong, he replies. It's exactly your right. Another pause. Longer this time. Patton turns his head and looks back at his own men. He sees the fatigue in their faces, weeks of fighting, crossing rivers under fire, pushing towns that all look the same, losing friends whose names are already being replaced by fresh arrivals. Then he looks back at the German commander. And it's your responsibility. The German officer's composure wavers, just a fraction. Enough. Patton senses it. This is not about weapons. It never was. This is about pressure. About dignity. About time. Patton reaches into his pocket. Several soldiers stiffen, hearts hammering. But what he pulls out is not a pistol. It is a folded map. He opens it slowly, deliberately, letting the paper crackle in the quiet square. He holds it out not as a demand, but as an offer. You can die here, Patton says evenly. Or you can live and ensure your men do the same. The German commander looks at the map. For the first time his breathing changes. The moment stretches. Every man present feels it. The invisible line between violence and surrender, thin as wire, humming under tension. No one knows which way it will snap. The weight of command. The German commander does not touch the map. He studies it from a distance as if the paper itself might explode. His eyes trace the hand-drawn lines, the bold arrows marking American advances, the red grease pencil circles tightening around what remains of his world. He knows these symbols. Any officer worth his rank does. Encirclement. Breakthrough. No retreat. Patton holds the map steady. He does not rush. He understands something most men with guns forget in moments like this. Silence is pressure. You see it? Patton says quietly. Not a question. A confirmation. The German commander exhales through his nose. For the first time the mask cracks. Just enough for exhaustion to leak through. My orders, he replies carefully, are to delay you as long as possible. Patton nods. He folds the map once. Then again. Unhurried. The sound of paper is loud in the stillness. You've delayed us, Patton says. Longer than Berlin expected. Longer than your men can afford. He gestures not aggressively, just a brief sweep of his hand toward the rubble-filled street. How many do you have left? Patton asks. The German hesitates. That hesitation is an answer. Enough to die, the commander says. Enough to die badly, Patton corrects. The words land heavy. Around them, American infantry continues to move, not rushing, not threatening, simply existing, occupying space, tightening the noose without firing a shot. A bar team posts up behind a low wall. A radio man adjusts his headset. Everything signals inevitability. Patton leans closer now. Not invading the man's space but narrowing it. Tell me something, he says. When this war ends, and it will end, what will be written about you? The German commander stiffens. Will they say you held a ruined street for another hour? Patton continues. Or that you saved the lives of men who trusted you? The German's eyes flicker again. This time they don't return to the Sherman. They look down the street behind him. Through the dust and smoke, shapes move, German soldiers. Young. Some barely more than boys. Rifles slung, uniforms patched and mismatched. They are watching their commander. Waiting. He feels their eyes. Their fear. Their hope. Patton sees the turn happening in real time. He presses, but gently. You were trained to command, Patton says. Command is not about dying last. It's about choosing when enough men have already died. The German commander's lips part slightly. He closes them again. You are asking me to betray my oath, he says. Patton's voice drops. No, he replies. I'm asking you to honor it. A breeze moves through the square, stirring ash at their feet. For a long moment, neither man speaks. Then the German commander does something no one expects. He removes his gloves. Slowly. Deliberately. Leather slides off skin. He folds them together once, then again as if performing a ritual. He holds them in one hand, fingers trembling just enough to betray the strain he's been carrying for months. When I was a cadet, he says, voice quieter now, they taught us that surrender was shame. Patton listens. Fully. No interruptions. They did not teach us, the German continues, what to do when shame and responsibility collide. Patton does not respond immediately. When he does, his voice is firm but not cruel. They taught you wrong, he says. Responsibility always wins. The German commander looks up. Meets Patton's eyes again. This time there is no defiance there. Only calculation. Only consequence. He turns slightly, just enough to glance back at his men. They straighten instinctively. One adjusts his helmet strap. Another grips his rifle tighter, knuckles white. They are ready to die if ordered. That is what loyalty looks like. And that is why this decision is breaking him. Patton steps back half a pace. He is giving the man room. Giving him ownership of what comes next. You don't have to answer me, Patton says. Answer them. The German commander closes his eyes. Just for a second. When he opens them, something has settled. Resolve, of a different kind. He reaches into his tunic pocket. Several Americans tense again. But what he produces is not a weapon. It is a whistle. He raises it slowly. Patton watches closely. He knows this sound could mean anything. An attack. A final stand. Chaos. The whistle touches the German commander's lips. Every man in the square holds his breath. And then, a sharp, clear blast cuts through the air. Not once. Twice. 3 times. A prearranged signal. Down the street, movement erupts. Not toward the Americans but away from them. Rifles are lowered. Hands rise. One by one, German soldiers step into the open, helmets off, fear etched into every face. The first weapon clatters to the ground. Then another. Then dozens. Patton does not smile. He nods. The German commander lowers the whistle. His shoulders sag as if a massive weight has finally been set down. It is done, he says. Patton steps forward and extends his hand. Not for the whistle. Not for the map. For the man. The German hesitates, then takes it. Their handshake is firm. Brief. Human. Around them the war pauses. But Patton already knows. This moment will echo far beyond this square. Because what he did next will define how this surrender is remembered. Patton's unwritten rule. Patton does not release the handshake immediately. It is not dominance. It is not theater. It is timing. He lets the German commander feel it, the absence of humiliation, the lack of triumph, the deliberate restraint. Then Patton lets go and steps half a pace back, restoring the distance of professionals, not enemies. "Colonel," Patton says, deliberately using the man's rank, "you made the correct decision." The word correct lands harder than brave ever could. The German colonel straightens reflexively. Years of drill do not vanish just because a war is ending. Around them, American soldiers begin moving forward in controlled waves, securing weapons, counting prisoners, checking corners. No shouting. No cheering. Patton will not allow it. He turns sharply toward one of his captains. "See that his officers remain with their men," Patton orders. "No separation unless medically required." The captain blinks, surprised, then nods. "Yes, sir." The German colonel hears this. His eyes flick back to Patton. "You will allow us that?" he asks. Patton's response is immediate. "I do," he says. Discipline doesn't end with surrender. This is Patton's unwritten rule. A defeated enemy is still an enemy, but he is also a soldier. And soldiers, Patton believes, understand order better than fear. Strip them of dignity and you invite chaos. Preserve it and you maintain control. The German colonel exhales slowly. Down the street, his men are being processed. Helmets stacked. Rifles laid in neat rows. An American medic kneels beside a wounded German private, applying a bandage without being asked. The private looks stunned. He had expected a rifle, but he got gauze and water. Patton watches all of it with sharp eyes. He spots a young American trooper grinning, adrenaline still buzzing in his veins. Patton fixes him with a stare. The grin disappears instantly. This is not a victory parade. This is a lesson. Patton turns back to the German colonel. "You'll walk with me," Patton says. Not a request. They move side by side through the square. The colonel's men see it, their commander not dragged, not shoved, but escorted. Heads lift slightly. Spines straighten. The shame they feared does not arrive. In its place is something else. Relief. As they pass a shattered storefront, the colonel speaks quietly. "You could have killed me," he says. Patton does not look at him. "Yes," he replies. "And you didn't," the colonel continues. "Why?" Patton stops walking. He turns. Now finally he looks the man square in the eyes. "Because dead men don't command anyone," Patton says. "Living commanders end wars faster." The colonel absorbs this. They resume walking. A jeep pulls up nearby. A staff sergeant jumps out, clipboard in hand, rattling off numbers. Prisoners counted, weapons collected, no resistance. Patton listens. Bruce waves him off. The colonel watches this machine at work, the efficiency, the calm. This is not the reckless army German propaganda had promised him. This is an army that knows it has already won. "You planned this," the colonel says suddenly. Patton arches an eyebrow. "Planned what?" "This," the colonel gestures faintly behind them. "Not the surrender. The moment." Patton allows himself the faintest hint of a smile. "I planned for men to make decisions," he says. "What they choose is up to them." They reach the edge of the square where a command car waits. An aide opens the door for Patton, then freezes, uncertain when he sees the German officer beside him. Patton does not hesitate. "He rides," Patton says. The aide snaps to attention. "Yes, sir." The German colonel hesitates now. "With you?" he asks. Patton nods once. "With me." As the car begins to roll, the colonel looks back one last time at his men being marched away, intact, alive. He swallows hard. "This will not be how Berlin wanted it," he says. Patton's voice is flat. Berlin doesn't get a vote anymore. The car moves out. Behind them, the town falls fully into American hands, not with a final shot, but with a decision. A choice made in silence. But word of what happened is already spreading. From platoons to battalions. From officers to headquarters. And soon far beyond this town. Because when a German commander tells Patton, "You'll have to kill me," and Patton doesn't, people start to talk. And talk changes behavior. The enemy is about to learn that Patton's most dangerous weapon isn't his tanks. It's his reputation. The message travels. The town is secure by nightfall. No final firefight. No burning last stand. Just the steady rhythm of boots, the click of rifle bolts being cleared, the low murmur of hundreds of prisoners being moved under guard. Fires are lit in courtyards. Field kitchens roll in. Radios crackle with updates that sound almost unreal. Minimal resistance. Enemy surrendered intact. Commanding officer cooperative. By 1910 hours, the report reaches 3rd Army headquarters. Patton reads it twice. Not because he doubts it, but because he understands its value. He does not correct the language. He does not embellish it either. He simply allows it to exist, clean and factual, knowing full well that facts are the sharpest rumors of all. Across the front, American officers repeat the story in fragments. Patton talked him down. Didn't fire a shot. German colonel stood his ground, and Patton let him keep it. Each retelling gains weight. And across the lines, carried by prisoners whispered in aid stations passed from unit to unit, the story crosses over. The Americans are not shooting officers who surrender. They are listening. In a shattered farmhouse 20 kilometers east, a German battalion commander hears the story from a wounded runner. He listens without comment, but that night he studies his maps longer than planned. In a forested ridge line, another officer delays blowing a bridge, waiting for confirmation that never comes. Reputations do more than inspire fear. They alter decisions. Patton understands this. He always has. That night, he sits at a folding table under a canvas awning eating cold rations. His revolvers lie nearby, untouched. A colonel from Corps headquarters approaches cautiously. "Sir," the colonel begins, "some officers think you took a risk today." Patton chews. Swallows. "Everything worth winning involves risk," he replies. "With respect, sir," the colonel continues, "if that German had ordered his men to fire." Patton cuts him off. "He didn't," Patton says. Silence stretches. "How were you sure?" the colonel asks. Patton finally looks up. "I wasn't," he says. "I was sure of something else." The colonel waits. Patton's voice lowers. "I was sure he didn't want to be remembered for dying in a street no one will remember." The colonel nods slowly. Nearby, the German colonel sits alone under guard, offered a cigarette by an American MP. He accepts. Lights it with a shaking hand. For the first time in weeks, he allows himself to sit without scanning for threats. An American lieutenant approaches him later with a clipboard. "Name. Rank. Unit." The colonel answers. The lieutenant hesitates, then adds quietly, "You did right today." The German colonel looks up, surprised. He nods once. That is all. Later that night, Patton passes the temporary holding area. He stops briefly, watching German officers confer quietly among themselves, still maintaining order, still commanding, even in defeat. Patton turns to his aide. "Tomorrow," he says, "I want surrender terms broadcast ahead of the line. Clear instructions. No tricks." "Yes, sir." "And make it known," Patton adds, "that officers who bring in their units intact will be treated accordingly." The aide understands immediately. This is not mercy. This is strategy. The next morning, white cloth appears in places it hadn't the day before. Improvised flags. Bandages tied to rifle barrels. Helmets placed upside down on fences. Resistance does not vanish. But it softens. And every softened edge saves lives, American and German alike. By the third day, the German colonel hears that 2 nearby units surrendered without firing after hearing his story. The knowledge hits him harder than defeat ever did. What he chose did not end his war. It shortened others. Patton stands over a map again, arrows still driving east. "Forward," he says. And this time the road opens faster than anyone expects. But there is a cost to this approach, one Patton has carried before. Not everyone believes restraint wins wars. And soon one voice, sharp, official and disapproving, will challenge Patton's methods from within his own command. The line between mercy and madness. The objection arrives wrapped in protocol. Stamp. Type. Delivered with proper salutes. It comes from higher headquarters. A staff general who has never stood 3 paces from an enemy commander with nothing but silence between them. The message is brief, clinical and carefully worded. Excessive personal exposure to enemy officers discouraged. Commanders are not negotiators. Risk to operational continuity noted. Patton reads it once. Then he folds it. Does not respond. Instead he walks. Outside, the front is moving again. Armor columns grind forward through villages that smell of smoke and thawing earth. Infantry rides the decks of tanks, rifles across knees, eyes scanning windows. The war is accelerating, collapsing inward on itself. An aide catches up. "Sir," he says carefully, "they're questioning the incident." Patton keeps walking. "Good," he replies. "That means they noticed." The aide hesitates. "Some think the Germans might exploit it." Patton stops. Turns. Fixes the aide with that famous penetrating stare. "Exploit what?" Patton asks. "Their own desire to live?" The aide says nothing. Patton resumes walking. He knows the criticism isn't about one German colonel. It's about Patton himself, about the fear he inspires and the unpredictability that comes with it. To some, what he did looks like mercy. To others, it looks like madness. But Patton understands the line better than anyone. He has crossed it before. He will cross it again. That afternoon, another German delegation approaches under a white flag. 3 officers, rigid, cautious, eyes darting. This time, Patton does not go alone. His staff remains nearby. Rifles cover the approach. But the method is the same. Firm voice. Clear terms. No humiliation. The surrender is accepted. Another pocket dissolves. By evening, reports stack up. Prisoners in the thousands. Ammunition captured. Bridges seized intact because someone hesitated, just long enough. Yet not everyone is convinced. In a tent lit by a single bulb, 2 American officers argue quietly. "He's playing with fire," one says. "All it takes is one fanatic." The other shrugs. Or one thinking man. Patton hears neither. But he feels the tension. That night he sits alone polishing one of his revolvers, not because it needs cleaning but because ritual steadies him. The metal gleams under the lamplight. He does not load it. He thinks of the German colonel. Of the whistle. Of the pause. Of the moment where the war bent instead of breaking. Patton knows history will never record that silence. It will record towns taken. Rivers crossed. Prisoners counted. But the silence mattered. The next morning, Patton receives another message. This one from a corps commander closer to the front. Enemy resistance uneven. Several units surrendering on approach. Officers requesting terms before engagement. Patton smiles thinly. The strategy is working. But strategies invite counters. And somewhere ahead, there is a commander who will not hesitate. Who will not listen. Who will see Patton's restraint as weakness, not wisdom. That commander is already preparing his defense. And when Patton meets him, there will be no map offered. No handshake. Only fire. When words stop working. March 30th, 1945. 4:20 hours. The outskirts of a rail junction town, name already crossed out on the map. Dawn hasn't arrived yet. The sky is a bruised gray, low clouds hanging heavy with the promise of rain. American infantry crouches in shell holes and ditches, breath fogging in the cold. Ahead, the town is silent, not the nervous silence of a garrison about to surrender, but something harder. Prepared. Patton studies the terrain through binoculars. This commander has not sent envoys. Has not raised flags. Has not asked questions. Railcars block intersections. Anti-tank guns are dug in, camouflaged with netting and debris. Telephone lines still run. Discipline holds. "This one won't fold," a colonel beside Patton mutters. Patton lowers the binoculars. "No," he agrees. "He won't." And Patton respects him for it. Negotiation is not a formula. It is a test, of fear, of pride, of time. Some men respond to inevitability. Others only respond to force. Patton signals once. Artillery wakes the earth. The first salvo slams into the rail yard, erupting in orange flashes and choking black smoke. The stillness shatters. Machine guns answer. Tracers stitch the air. Tanks surge forward, engines roaring, infantry rising and advancing in practiced rhythm. There is no pause this time. No map. No whistle. Just war in its purest form. By mid-morning the town burns. Resistance is crushed block by block, paid for in blood on both sides. German defenders fight to the last magazine. Some do not retreat even when overrun. They die where they stand. When it ends, Patton walks the wreckage. His boots crunch over shattered brick and glass. Medics work frantically. Litter teams move fast. A Sherman smolders, hit by a Panzerfaust at close range. 3 Americans lie covered nearby. Patton stops. Removes his helmet. For a long moment he says nothing. Then he turns to his staff. "Mark this," he says quietly. "This is what happens when a man decides there's nothing left but dying." No one argues. That afternoon, a captured German lieutenant is brought before him. Shaken, eyes hollow, uniform blackened with soot. Patton looks at him. "Your commander?" Patton asks. Dead, the lieutenant answers. Killed himself rather than surrender. Patton nods once. No judgment. No comment. Later word spreads. The contrast is impossible to miss. One commander lived, and saved his men. One commander died and took hundreds with him. German officers take notice. So do American ones. That evening, Patton receives a final message from higher command. The tone is different now. Less criticism. More acceptance. Advance authorized at discretion. Local surrender negotiations permitted where advantageous. Patton folds the paper. That is as close to an apology as he will get. He doesn't need more. As night falls, the German colonel from days earlier is transferred to a rear holding area. Before he leaves, he requests a brief word with Patton. They stand apart from the camp, under a dim lantern. I heard about the rail town, the colonel says quietly. Patton nods. You were right, the German continues. Not every man can choose as I did. Patton studies him. No, he says. But every man thinks he can, until the moment comes. The colonel hesitates. Will you remember me as weak? He asks. Patton answers without hesitation. I'll remember you as effective. The colonel exhales, a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. As he walks away, Patton watches him go. The war is nearly over now. But lessons like this don't end with wars. They outlive them. And long after the guns fall silent, this moment, when a general chose restraint over reflex, will be studied, argued, misunderstood, and quietly admired. The quiet victory. April 2, 1945. 11:30 hours. A requisition schoolhouse serving as 3rd Army headquarters. Sunlight pours through tall windows, illuminating chalkboards still marked with half-erased lessons. Maps now cover the walls, Germany reduced to arrows, circles, and timelines. The war has become geometry. Patton stands alone at the largest map. The front has surged forward again. Faster than projected. Cleaner than expected. Surrenders continue to arrive, uneven, imperfect, but undeniable. Units approaching American lines slow down. Scouts report less preparatory fire. Fewer demolitions. More hesitation. Patton traces a finger along a road toward the east. This gap, he says to no one in particular, didn't exist a week ago. An intelligence officer nearby clears his throat. Enemy commanders appear. Uncertain, sir. Patton nods. Uncertainty is a crack. And cracks end wars. A messenger enters, boots muddy, helmet tucked under his arm. Sir, he says, another delegation requesting surrender terms. Battalion strength. Patton doesn't look up. Process them, he says. Same terms. The officer hesitates. They specifically asked if he would receive their commander. Patton finally turns. Did he hold ground unnecessarily? Patton asks. No, sir. He withdrew civilians first. Then approached under flag. Patton considers this. I'll see him, he says. The meeting is brief. Professional. Controlled. No dramatics. The German commander salutes first. Patton returns it. The exchange is over in minutes. Outside, an American sergeant watches German soldiers stack weapons in silence. No jeers. No triumph. Just the sound of metal on stone. This isn't how I imagined it, the sergeant mutters to a friend. His friend shrugs. Better than the other way. Later that day, Patton dictates a note for his war diary. He does not mention names. He does not mention the whistle. He does not mention the map. He writes only this. Command decisions are contagious. That evening, rain begins to fall. It washes soot from streets. Blood from stone. Chalk dust from boots. The war keeps moving but softer now, like a storm breaking into scattered showers. Patton stands under an awning watching it. An aide approaches quietly. Sir, he says, some of the men say you spared that first German commander. Patton does not correct him. Some say you didn't need to, the aide adds. Patton looks out at the rain. Need, he says slowly, is a word people use when they don't understand options. The aide nods, unsure. Far behind the lines, the German colonel hears the rain too. From a train car carrying prisoners west. He thinks of the square. The silence. The hand extended instead of a gun. He realizes something then. The moment did not end when the whistle blew. It is still happening. With every unit that chooses surrender. With every bridge left standing. With every life not spent proving a point. Back at headquarters, Patton folds his map. Tomorrow the advance continues. Soon the war will end. But this story, this one moment of decision, will not. Because one day long after the gunfire fades, someone will ask, what did Patton do when a German commander told him, "You'll have to kill me"? And the answer will surprise them. Legacy in the rubble. April 5, 1945. 1800 hours. Near the outskirts of Nuremberg, Germany. The war is moving faster than most men can process. Streets are shattered, buildings hollowed, smoke curling into a pale sky. Yet, among the chaos, there is a peculiar calm in Patton's column. Officers walk confidently. Soldiers glance at the horizon without panic. Even the prisoners, now escorted in organized groups, move with a tentative order that belies the destruction around them. The German colonel from the first surrender walks beside his men, keeping them disciplined. His uniform is dusty, patched, but his posture is unchanged. He glances at Patton once, quickly, then focuses on his unit. The lesson of the square, of dignity and decision, travels faster than orders. Patton's own staff notices it. Conversations ripple through the ranks. Soldiers repeat the story in whispers, then louder. Commanders in nearby towns begin adjusting tactics, avoiding unnecessary destruction. The reputation of one man, standing calm under threat, has reshaped behavior across an entire front. Patton doesn't boast. He doesn't write press releases. He doesn't celebrate. His method is quiet, surgical, effective. Yet the impact is immediate. Bridges are preserved. Prisoners are held safely. Units surrender intact rather than fight to annihilation. Lives, American and German alike, are saved. Even high command takes notice. Dispatches arrive, praising the efficiency of his advances, questioning the ethics, speculating on his methods. Some write of his audacity. Others of his apparent mercy. Patton knows the war is far from over, but he also knows the truth. Leadership is not merely about force. It is about presence, judgment, and understanding the human element in war. By nightfall, Patton sits alone again reviewing reports. One officer asks quietly about the first German commander, the one who stood in the ruined square, declaring that Patton would have to kill him. Patton leans back. His eyes trace the dim horizon. "He was right to stand," Patton says softly. "And I was right to listen. That's how wars end faster. That's how men survive." The colonel's whistle. The map. The handshake. Every small choice, calculated, deliberate, created ripples across the battlefield. In the rubble of towns, in the echo of artillery, in the faces of those who surrendered, the lesson persists. Courage is not only measured in bullets but in restraint. Far from being forgotten, the story spreads, whispered among soldiers, recounted in mess halls, analyzed in command tents. It becomes a study in leadership, when to act, when to wait, when to impose authority without force. Patton's gaze shifts to the stars beginning to pierce the night sky. Somewhere out there, the German colonel reflects on that moment in the square. He survived. His men survived. The world survived another small piece of itself because one general understood that killing a man was not always necessary to win a war. And in that realization, Patton leaves a legacy that will echo long after the last shell is fired. Not for trophies, medals, or headlines, but for the quiet, enduring truth that sometimes, the most shocking move is the one you don't make.